Some statistics. We're going to invite Mr. Sheng Laiyun from National Bureau of Statistics to brief us about the national economy in 2025. Now let's give the floor to Mr. Sheng. Ladies and gentlemen, dear media friends, it's a pleasure to brief you about the statistics of national economy. As tradition, we would love to publish the main statistics of Q1 2025 as to our economy, and then I will take your questions. In Q1, we got off to a good start economically. Under the leadership of Communist Party of China, with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, different departments have been implementing the instructions of CPC Central Committee and the State Council to complete our tasks. We speed up our pace in building a new development landscape and work on the high-quality growth. We have taken macroeconomic policies with the effects being felt. Our supply has been increasing, new quality productive forces are taking shape, and domestic demand has been enlarged. The employment is stabilized, so national economy got off to a good start, and high-quality growth is picking up. According to rough estimate, in Q1, the GDP registered 31.87 trillion RMB yuan, an year-on-year increase of 5.4% compared to Q4 2024, that was up by 1.2%. Divided by industries, the first industry increased by 3.5%, 5.9% for second industry, and 5.3% up in the tertiary industry. First of all, agriculture development has been good. In Q1, agriculture increment increased by 4% year-on-year. The winter wheat has a larger sowing area, and in springtime, the sowing was going on smoothly. According to our survey for the corn and rice, the sowing area was increasing as well. And as to the meat, the total output was up by 2% year-on-year. Second of all, industries have been growing fast. Equipment manufacturing and machinery have been enlarged. In Q1, the industry added value was up by 6.5% year-on-year. That's about 0.7 percentage point higher than last year. Divided by three industries, mining was up by 6.2%, manufacturing up 7.1%, electricity, heating, and water supply were up by 1.9%. Equipment manufacturing added value was up by 10.9%, 3.2 percentage higher than last year, and 9.7% was up for the advanced industries. And for the shareholding companies, they were up by 7.2%. The foreign invested companies increased by 4%, and private enterprises were up by 7.3%. And for tertiary industry, the added value was up by 7.7%. That's about 1.8 percentage higher than the first 2 months. In the first 2 months, the industries above designated level had a profit down by 0.3%, and the decrease size was also narrowed compared to last year. For the tertiary industry, it's growing pretty well. In Q1, the tertiary industry's increment was up by 5.3% compared to 2024. That's 0.3 percentage higher. For information service industry and commercial service industry, transport, warehousing, postal services, warehousing, retail, accommodation, and catering, they were up by 10.3, 10.2, 7.2, 5.8, 5.1% respectively. In March, the service industry production index was up by 6.3% compared to the first 2 months. That's also 0.7 percentage higher. Fourth, sales picked up, and the replacement campaign triggered new growth. In quarter one, the social consumption goods registered 4.2 trillion. That's up by 4.6%. And based on the operational area, in the urban area, consumption was up by 4.5%. In villages, it was up by 4.9%. Divided by the categories of consumption, the goods were up by 4.06%. The sales online was up by 7.9%. The brick-and-mortar goods sales online was up by 5.7%. In March, the social goods sales were up by 5.9% in total, and it was up by 0.58% compared to last month. Fifth, for fixed asset investment, it took steady increase. The high-tech industries grow faster. In quarter one, fixed asset investment was registering 1 billion, up by 10.2% year-on-year. That's about 1 percentage point higher compared to last year. And if we have excluded real estate, the fixed asset investment was up by 8%, and manufacturing industry was up by 9.1%. Real estate was down by 9.9%. The newly built commercial houses had a 3% lower area compared to last year. And as to sales of the newly built houses, it was down also by 0.5%. By different industries, the first industry had a year-on-year increase of 16% and 11.7% for second industry and 0.1% up in tertiary industry. Private investment was up by 0.4%. For high-tech industry investment, it was up by 6.5% year-on-year. In March, fixed asset investment was up by 0.6% compared to the previous month. Sixth, the commodities export and import maintained good momentum with improved structure of trade. Seventh, the consumer price index was steady. And the statistics have already been published, so I will skip that part. Eighth, employment was stabilized. The unemployment ratio in the urban area has been down a little bit. In quarter one, the surveyed unemployment rate nationwide was averaged at 5.3%. In March, urban area unemployment rate was 5.2%, 0.2 percentage point lower than the previous month. And as to our city, it's about 5.3%. For those migrant workers, the unemployment ratio in our city was 5.9%. By the end of quarter one, those migrant workers totaled 18,795. That was up by 1.1% year-on-year. And the residents' income has been growing steadily. In quarter one, the disposable income was up by 5.5%. If we excluded the factor of a price, the actual increase was 5.6%. Urban area disposable income was about 15,000. That was up by 0.9%. Actual increase was 5%. And for the rural residents' disposable income, it was averaged at 7,000. The actual increase was about 0.9%. In terms of net income, net asset, the nominal growth rate was 5.9%, 2.7%, and 2.5% respectively. The median income nationwide was about 9,300. In general, in quarter one, with different macro policies releasing their effects, our national economy has got off to a good start. We have sustained the sound momentum. Innovation is playing a bigger role. We are cultivating new drivers, but we must be aware about the complicated external environment. The domestic valid demand is limited, so we need to further cement the foundations of the economy. In the next step, we must be guided by the socialism with Chinese characteristics proposed by President Xi Jinping and commit to the overall working style of seeking progress steadily. And we must execute the new development concept to usher in new development landscape. We must take more proactive macro policies to develop our domestic circulation and mobilize the incentives of different players in China in order to rise up to those uncertainties externally so that our economy will continue such a pickup trend. So that's about the main statistics of our national economy in Q1, and I'm ready to take your questions. Please identify yourself before raising the questions. From CMG. We read the statistics. In general, in Q1, national economic indexes were performing well. So what's your comment about the reasons of such economic performance in Q1? Thank you for the question. In 2025, international environment has been very complex, dealing some shocks to China's economy. And there have been some pains felt by the enterprises. In face of such complex situation, the CPC Central Committee made smart decisions. Different departments across China implemented carefully the spirits and instructions of the Central Economic Conference and the Government Work Report. We united as one to make a difference. We sped up the implementation of those proactive macro policies, effectively responding to external challenges. So, in Q1, we got off to a steady and good start. High-quality development has been making progress steadily. According to our statistics, there have been some stark features. First, we have steady growth. As has been published, GDP growth rate was 5.4% in Q1. That was above the 5% last year on average. And also, in Q1 last year, our GDP growth ratio was 5.3%. So this year's number is bigger. Globally speaking, if we compare with the main economies, we are also ranking among the top. So if you look at the growth rate, we have sustained the progress made since last year. And as to the production and demand, they are also rebounding in Q1. For the industries, the growth rate was 6.3%. That was 0.7 percentage higher than last year. For service industry, it grew by 5.3%. Investment was up by 4.6%. Last year, throughout the whole year, investment growth rate was 4.2%. And social goods retails was also up by 0.1 percentage point compared to last year. And secondly, as to employment and income, they also grew steadily. Unemployment ratio was 5.3%. Calculated by March data, it was 5.2%, 0.2 percentage down compared to the first 2 months. Income for the residents was up by 5.6%. That was in parallel with the GDP growth rate. The third feature is about the new drivers behind our economy are being reinforced. International balance of payment is good. the global economy has been pretty weak in Q1, but export and import of China have been kept in balance. Export was up by 1.3% in Q1. For both import and export. For export, it was up by 6.9%. Service industry export was up by 9.9%. Forex was kept as $3.2 trillion. That was a hard-won result. As you know, since February, the international trade restrictions have been climbing up. China's export could achieve 6.9% of growth, showcasing the resilience of China's trade. Fourth, high-quality development has been looking up. While generating the quantitative growth, new quality productive forces have been cultivated. High-quality growth momentum has been secured. Multiple technological breakthroughs have been made, so the Q1 high-tech industries have accelerated their growth. As has been introduced, high-tech increment above designated level was up by 9.7%. Green development has been facilitated. Non-fossil fuel has 1.5 percentage point higher of contribution. And also we have opened wider to the outside world. People's livelihood has been improved. So in Q1, high-quality development was performing well. And fourth, the market sentiment was improved. Because of the macro policies and incremental policies, we have enlarged demand and stimulated production, cementing people's confidence. In March, PMI was 50.5%, 0.3 percentage higher, and we have registered such a growth for 2 months consecutively. For some production factors, they are providing a supportive role. The freight transport was up by 15.9%, and PBOC published a RMB-denominated credit growth of 7.3%. All of those productive forces are providing such a strong supportive role, generating more vitality in the market. Those could explain why our economy has been picking up. So since we got off to a good start in terms of high-quality development in Q1, we demonstrated the strong resilience of China's economy as well as its promising future. The reason that we could earn such a good result in Q1, first of all, it's thanks to the decision of CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, and also it's thanks to the arduous efforts made by the general public. The Central Political Bureau Conference last year introduced the incremental policies to stabilize our economy. That's why, since this year, we are feeling the effects of such policies. In this year's Central Economic Conference, we have unveiled other series of active and effective macro policies. Those policy measures helped to enlarge the size of our economy. With the policies combined, we could achieve such a good performance in Q1. Besides, different localities and departments have been executing the arrangements of the CPC Central Committee by taking solid steps to have a good achievement in the beginning of this year, triggering the recovery of production and demand. Third, China aggressively developed technologies and innovation. Those technological results have been surfacing, and they are being applied at a faster pace. So new economic drivers are taking shape. All of those factors contributed to the good starting point of 2025. But while we recognize the achievements, we must also be aware of the complex international environment. Protectionism is rising up. The international economic order has been battered, and domestic restructuring is still challenged. So to continue such a good momentum, we need more efforts done. We must unite and rally around CPC Central Committee and work on our consensus to respond to risks and challenges actively. We must take collective efforts to do big deeds with the stabilized growth and high-quality development in China. We are able to respond to the uncertainties externally. Thank you.
Thank you, Bloomberg News. Is there an estimate on how much U.S. tariffs will reduce China's GDP growth this year if the 145% level stays after the pause on tech goods expires? And what's your outlook for the growth trajectory in the coming quarters? How optimistic is the government about achieving its growth target this year of around 5%? Thank you.
彭博社记者提问：当前美对华加征145%的关税，如果关于部分科技产品的临时缓和结束之后，该关税水平依然保持在145%，那么中方估计会对中国的 GDP 造成多少的影响？请问您对未来几个季度中国经济增速的展望如何？中国是否能够实现今年5%左右的增长目标？谢谢。
Thank you for the question. We stand firmly against the trade barriers by the USA. Such a measure is against economic rules as well as the WTO regulations. It has severely shocked the international economic order, and it will drag the economic recovery globally. We will firmly take such countermeasures in order to safeguard our own interests of development and to protect the multilateralism and the just international economic order. Such a high tariff posed by US will bring certain pressure on China's trade and economy, but it will not shake the overall picture of a sound pickup momentum in China, thanks to China's good economic foundation, huge potential, and we are confident and capable of responding to the challenge in order to hit our set goals. In details, we have good foundations economically because of our demand support. With 40 years of reform and opening up, China makes itself to be the second largest world economy. For 15 years in a row, in manufacturing, we installed ourselves as number one. And we have very complete industrial system, and the foundations of our economy are solid. Besides, China has 1.4 billion population. The large market size works to our benefit. Per capita GDP was just above 13,000 RMB yuan. We are at a critical stage of consumption upgrading. So the growth potential of our market is looking good. In terms of investment and consumption, we have enough space of growth that will further support China's sustainable economic growth. Secondly, market diversification and resilient export. China relies on our complete industrial system and internationally competitive products. We earn a good reputation internationally. In recent years, China actively expanded our international market and established diversified international trade landscape with pretty good effects. Now, with 150 countries in the world, we are trade partners. Besides, we are implementing the BRI initiative to develop trade volume in the countries along BRI. And in Q1, for the countries along BRI initiative, the trade increase was 7.2%. The trade export and import took up 50% of the total trade volume with China. So such a diversified market landscape is taking shape. Our reliance on one single country to develop trade is down. In 2018, our trade volume with US contributed to 19.2% of the total. Last year, that contribution ratio was down to 4.6%. We are very resilient. If you read the trade statistics in Q1 2025, despite the restrictions of trade, our export was still up by 6.9%. Third, effective restructuring and new drivers. Since 18th National Congress, China has been facilitating high-quality growth and restructuring. Previously, we relied on investment to trigger export. That pattern of development was restructured. Now, China's economy relies more on internal demand and innovation to usher in new development landscape. In the past 5 years, the contribution ratio of domestic demand to our economy was on average above 80%. But last year, 18% were from the cutting-edge technology. For digital technologies, core industries' contribution to GDP ratio was about 10%. So new drivers are growing. That is conducive to improve China's economic stability. Fourth, we are experienced in responding to external challenges with steady policies. China's economy has weathered through big waves. We have grappled with Asian and world economic crisis and trade deficit as well as COVID-19, but still we made it today. We have accumulated rich experience in macro control. As to this year, the Central Economic Conference has thoroughly predicted the situation and timely unveiled the policy of macro economy, which is we will take more proactive fiscal policy and moderately loose monetary policy. Based on the effects of Q1, such policies were exerting stark influences, contributing to the good starting point of our economy in Q1. And based on the changes of external environment, we will fine-tune our policies. After all, we have plenty of policy instruments. So in response to such external shocks, we are reassured. Fifth, the general public is confident. We have the tenured and firm leadership of CPC Central Committee. In response to any challenge, we are able to mobilize the resources. Besides, our entrepreneurs are emboldened. The Chinese people are hardworking. All of those spirits and qualities are the basis for us to respond to any major risk and challenge. Based on the above-mentioned reasons, we are confident about the future of China's economy. Thank you. Daily economy. Recently, the central government has unveiled some new macro policies. For example, the policy of optimizing real estate market. What are the effects of such new policies? Thank you for the question. The statistics I published already showed some effects of our macro policies. I repeatedly mentioned that since Q4 last year, the central government introduced a basket of macro control policies, reversing the downward trend and contributing to the economic pickup. This year, macro policies were further added. We took proactive macro policies this year. Some policies were unveiled to add more effects. You mentioned about some policies of subsidies with a wider coverage. We hope to further expand the scope, and different localities are implementing the instructions. Based on the actual situation, many localities have detailized the policies. They were pretty solid policies. Some are the already available policies in the previous years. Some are newly added policies. Together, they contributed to the consumption growth and industrial growth. According to the statistics, the policy effects are showcased continuously. I think there are 5 results. First, effectively promoting consumption recovery. This year, the retail sales in Q1 increased by 4.6%. That was 1.1 percentage higher than 2024. That was pretty big jump up. Among them, for the policy of replacement of the consumption goods, effect was more conspicuous. For the newly added sectors like smartwatches and tablets, their sales have registered pretty big growth rates. For your information, the telecommunication vehicles sales were up by 26.9%. Culture and stationery products were up by 21.7%. Home appliances up by 19.3%. For those above mentioned, they have contributed to 1.4 percentage higher of consumption goods retail sales. Some data from the commercial ministry. By 18th of April, consumers have bought 12 categories of replacement products at the number of 35 million. And for the application of the subsidies of old for new services, they have also contributed greatly to consumption rebound. Secondly, investment boost. was triggered. Since this year, the local dedicated loans have helped to improve the financial situation and the implementation of projects. The newly issued debt was approaching 1 trillion RMB yuan. So fixed asset investment was up by 3.7% in place. But last year it was below zero. For infrastructure investment, it was up by 5.8%. And for the large-scale equipment iteration, the equipment and tools investment in Q1 was up by 19%. That was 3.3% higher than last year, contributing to 64.6% of the total investment. Third, industrial production was encouraged. It further triggered the consumption and iteration of the investment goods. So the enterprises would speed up their production of such goods. The relevant manufacturing industries were performing pretty good in Q1. Agricultural products, packaging, equipment, they registered double-digit growth, and EVs increased by 45%. The charging poles also increased by over 20%. Fourth, we have effectively improved the market vitality. That was destined. Thanks to the production improvement and the circulation improvement, the market was more active. Certain productive forces played their role. For example, the delivery services and transport and logistics have risen up. Those new policies contributed to stabilizing the real estate market and stirring up the stock market. The overall market activity was stronger. Fifth, we have effectively boosted market confidence. The package of policies were releasing their effects. People have better expectation of the market. The PMI index in March was 50.5%. For 2 months in a row since this year, we had a recovery. From that dimension, our macro policies are truly effective this year. On September 26 last year, we ushered in the policies to reverse the downward trend. Added by new policies this year, we got off to a better start economically. In the future, we will further monitor the implementation of the policies in details so as to better release the potential of such policies. Thank you. Could you please comment on the consumption in Q1? How do we ensure the steady performance of our economy in response to the U.S. policy? Consumption matters to people's livelihood and our economy. The CPC Central Committee put high premium on enlarging consumption. Central Economic Conference and the Government Work Report released during the 2 sessions stated that we must reinvigorate consumption and enlarge domestic demand. That policy has been prioritized. On March the 16th, the State Council General Office published a new measure about how to reinvigorate consumption to better support the consumption boost. Based on the implementation of such policies, they were starting to play their role with significant effects shown as follows. First, the market consumption was recovering steadily. Just then, I published the data about the retail sales. The total retail was 12.5 trillion RMB yuan. That was up by 1.1 percentage point compared to last year. In March, the retail sales was also up by 1.9 percentage point compared to February. Secondly, the goods retail sales were growing fast. Previously, I've mentioned about the policy of old for new services. Under the influence of such policy, some consumption goods registered double-digit growth. So market consumption was improving steadily. Thirdly, service consumption is burgeoning. Based on data of Q1, in terms of boosting consumption, thanks to the policies, service-related consumption is accelerated in growth. In Q1, the service retail sales grew by 5%. That was 0.4 percentage point higher than that of goods retail. And the other related consumption areas, they also registered double-digit growth. In Q1, the residents per capita telecommunication expenditure grew up by 4.4%. Educational and entertainment expenditure was up by 13.9% year-on-year. And also in Q1, we have Spring Festival and the Tomb Sweeping Festival with larger population flow. So relevant consumption areas registered double-digit growth as well. Service consumption retail among total expenditure of the residents was about 44.3%, 0.1 percentage point higher than that of last year. So service-related consumption underpins the consumption growth as a pillar area, and it has a very big space of further improvement. Fourth, new consumption drivers are unleashed. Thanks to AI and big data application, new consumption scenarios were created. For example, live show to boost sales, and night economy also triggered more consumption behaviors. Digital consumption, AI games were the other sound factors. The cultural goods consumption outperformed as well. Something impressive is about the movie Ne Zha. It was quite a blockbuster. Box office of it exceeded 15 billion RMB yuan. Those new scenarios of consumption were created, and new consumption goods were innovated, demonstrating the innovative feature of China's consumption sector and also the potential of new consumption. In general, in Q1, under the influence of policies, consumption is being improved continuously, but we are also aware that consumption is like the function factor of income. We must also keep improving people's capacity of consumption. According to the policies of CPC Central Committee, we will undertake the campaign of invigorating consumption to stabilize people's income and boost people's capacity of consumption. We will improve the supply of consumption, improve the environment of consumption so that our national economy would continue such a rebound. From 21st Century Economic newspaper. CPI was down in March, but the core CPI was up. What's the reason for that? And what's your comment on the trend of CPI? The CPI goal was set at 2% during the two sessions. Do you think we can hit the target of CPI? Thank you for the questions. I know you're all very concerned about the price trend, because price is important to the macroeconomic features like inflation ratio. It also is important to people's lifestyles. For the price trend, I have 3 points to make. First, the price decrease in March was due to some seasonal price change of certain products, as well as the crude oil price decrease internationally. CPI in Q1 was 0.1. In March, CPI was also 0.1. But in March, compared to the first 2 months, it was down by 0.4%. So it was going down month by month. And there are 3 reasons. First, in the wake of the Spring Festival, agricultural products consumption was down seasonally. And this year we experienced a warm winter. So in the wake of Spring Festival, temperature was going up. Fruits and vegetables were in abundant supply. So food price was on a downward trend. In March, compared to the last month, the food price index was down, contributing to CPI decrease. CPI was down by 0.24% compared to the last month, which means 60% of the CPI decrease in Q1 was due to the seasonal food price decrease. The second factor was that in the wake of the Spring Festival, the transportation expenditure was down. Traveling expenses and the airliners experienced a downward trend. For example, in March, 11.5% decrease was seen in the airliners, and traveling expenses were down by 5%. For the 2 indexes, the CPI of the above-mentioned 2 was down by 1.3%. The third factor was the decrease of crude oil, contributing to the readjustment of oil and gas in China. In March, it was down by 3.5%, bringing down CPI by 0.12% point. Because of the 3 above-mentioned factors, CPI index in Q1 was down. Secondly, we must take a holistic view at the relatively low price level. In the recent 2 years, whether it's CPI or PPI, they were fluctuating at a pretty low level. As to the reasons for the low-level price trend, they include domestic and international environment and the transition of China's economic drivers. Now, China is at the critical moment of restructuring, and consumption upgrading. Some traditional industries and traditional drivers were decreasing. So we have to readjust the prices for the traditional industries to exit. Meanwhile, new drivers are growing. They were urgently needed, so that could explain the price increase. But in general, the new drivers' price increase cannot offset the decrease pressure brought by the exit of traditional industries. That's why, in general, our price was fluctuating at a pretty low level. To use a metaphor, the real estate has also played a big role in price. In the past 2 years, the restructuring of the real estate market has contributed to the price decrease of construction materials and iron and steel. From 2016 to 2019, the black metals industry represented by iron and steel, for example, the crude steel, their price increase was averaged at 9% yearly. But in 2020 to 2024, iron and steel price increase was averaged at 0.9%. The restructuring of relevant industries would certainly lead to the price fluctuations of the certain products. We must take an objective and holistic view at the relatively low price levels. The fluctuations of prices were temporary. And thirdly, we must take multiple measures to support a rebound of the price. The price increase would mean higher expenditures and life cost. But if the price is too low, the enterprises would be disincentivized. That would damage employment. So to keep the price within a reasonable range is very important. The 2 sessions this year propose that we must take strenuous efforts to support our price level within a reasonable range. To that end, certain departments have taken a series of measures to support the price increase. We need to enlarge domestic demand for one thing, and for another, we must strike a balance between the domestic demand increase and the market order stabilization. We must improve the operating mechanism of the price in order to avoid a rat race. All of those measures would help to bring back the price level to a reasonable level. Based on the Q1 price situation, I think the certain policies are showing their effects already. For example, in March, although CPI was a negative 0.1, compared to February, it was negative 0.7. We have narrowed the number. And the core CPI, deducted by energy and food, in March was up by 0.5%. In February, it was negative 0.1. That means with the economic recovery and the reasonable policies to support the price recovery, the effects are being felt. Of course, it takes time. Especially, price change is influenced by multiple factors. So first and foremost, we must promote economic recovery. That is the root. Secondly, we must have comprehensive governance of price. We must coordinate between supply-side structural reform and enlarging domestic demand. We must observe the principle of a unified big market to avoid fierce rat race. We must take comprehensive measures to support reasonable recovery of price level. Thank you. From CNBC. According to some analysts, in the first 2 months, the real estate market statistics were optimistic, but in March, the statistics were pessimistic. So what's your take about the future of the real estate market? Thank you. In Q1, in general, the property market was recovering. You mentioned that some statistics were not looking good in March. Actually, you haven't seen the data about the price of the houses. In the big cities, we would publish the price level of the houses today. According to such statistics, whether in Tier 1 or Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, whether it's the new houses or second-hand houses, their price levels were improving. In Tier 1 city, price of the properties was increasing. For Tier 2, it's in parallel with the previous level. For Tier 3 cities, their decrease was narrowed down. So from that sense, the macro control policies in the property market was taking effect. So it wasn't true that we should be pessimistic about the statistics in March. That's my first point. Secondly, under the influence of policies, real estate market was sustaining the steady progress and improvement. Since Q4 2024, the central government emphasized that we must encourage the property market to be stabilized. A series of measures have been taken accordingly to reactivate the property market. We have improved the investment scenario in the real estate market. We have refurbished the old and dilapidated communities, and the white list policy was introduced by enterprises. In general, the policy effects were surfacing. Property market transactions were improved as well. In Q1, the newly built houses construction area was down by 3%, but compared to the same time last year, the decrease was narrowed down by 9.9 percentage points. Compared to January and February, the decrease level was narrowed by 2.1 percentage points, and the sales volume decrease was also narrowed down by 15%. According to our monitoring of 40 cities in Q1, the newly established construction area was performing good in Tier 1 cities. The construction area was up by 0.6% in Tier 1 cities. So the market is growing more active. Secondly, based on the price trajectory of the property market, as I said, in Tier 1 and the Tier 2 cities, some markets are stabilized, some are narrowing down their decrease level. Besides, the operation of the real estate enterprises has been improved because of the recovery of consumption and the whitelist policy. The cash flow situation was improved. In Q1, the developers' credit decrease was narrowed down by 2.8%. The individual mortgage decrease level was narrowed down by 10.7%. All of those data showed that property market macro policies were starting to take effect. Of course, it takes time to have some qualitative change because, in general, the property market is still in adjustment. Demand in the real estate market has to be released gradually. As I mentioned, in general, China's consumption structure is in the process of upgrading. Urbanization has not been done yet. So the property market has a big space of growth, especially for the high-quality houses. Such comfortable and spacious houses are still urgently needed. We must further execute the policies of the central government as to how to stabilize the property market. We must step up our efforts in building high-quality houses to usher in some new development model of the property market. Thank you. Thank you. From Southern Daily, the central government pays attention to new quality productive forces. Different departments have been actively introducing certain supportive policies. So for new quality productive forces and high quality growth this year, what are the new effects and achievements? High quality growth is the top priority of our modernization drive. Cultivating new quality productive forces is the internal demand of high-quality growth. The CPC Central Committee and the State Council pay high attention to the cultivation of new quality productive forces and high-quality growth. Different localities also were closely following. We are turning to the target of high-quality growth despite the international situations. We have been carefully implementing the concept of new quality development. We upgraded the new industrial system and keep pace with innovation, momentum, and cultivate new quality productive forces to pursue high-quality growth. From the statistics at hand, from 5 dimensions, we can reflect the fact that new quality productive forces are developed. First, innovation. The new quality productive forces are being developed. In Q1, different localities intensified their support of innovation. Especially AI, quantum telecommunication, and other cutting-edge technologies have been gradually applied, leading the development of high-tech industries. As you know, during the Spring Festival, DeepSeek and humanoid robotics have been marketed, showcasing the strength of China's technological innovation. It also boosted market confidence. Just now, as I introduced, the high-tech industry's added value above designated level was up by 9% in Q1. For information technology and software, it was up by 10.3% yearly. Those two statistics testified that we have stronger capacity of innovation. The second dimension is coordinated development. Whether in terms of industrial structure and demand structure, they have been improved. In terms of industrial structure, the coordinated development of the three industries have played a big role in supporting economy. In the second industry, equipment manufacturing, added value accounted for a larger proportion in the overall industry. Equipment manufacturing contribution ratio to the total industry was about 33.7%. High-tech industries' added value contributed 15.7% to the industry as a whole. That was up by 0.5 percentage points. So, among industries, many sectors have been moving towards greening and high-end. As to demand, though investment level is not standing high, investment in high-tech industries has a larger proportion. High-tech investment in Q1 was up by 6.5%, 0.3 percentage point higher. So industrial structure and demand structure are being improved altogether. The third dimension is about openness. Higher level openness is pursued. As I said, we are now actively formulating new trade landscape to diversify the market. In particular, we are engaging actively with countries along BRI initiative. New trade landscape is taking shape at a faster pace. The fourth dimension is about green transition. We take solid steps to pursue green growth, new energy, NEVs, lithium batteries, PV industries could represent the new energy industry. They have registered fast growth. Non-fossil fuels, nuclear power, wind power generated electricity has taken a larger proportion. Non-fossil fuels proportion of energy consumption was about 18% in Q1 this year. So we have laid a solid foundation for high-quality development because of the green growth. Fifth, about improving people's livelihood, we have made progress. Employment has been stabilized, people's income growth has been in parallel with GDP growth. The Chinese government pay higher attention to the expenditure to improve people's livelihood. Although this year we have a tight fiscal budget, our expenditure on the other sectors have been decreased, but still the expenditure flowing to improving people's livelihood is growing. This year, in terms of crude oil, coal production, they have made steady increase. In terms of diffusing local debt, financial risks locally, or risks in the property market, we have taken some effective measures. the safety level of our economy is improved. So from the above mentioned 5 dimensions, high quality development is going on. We keep securing new achievements. Of course, it takes time to have some substantial results. We still need to take long-term efforts despite the changes in the international community. We must stay confident and stay committed to high-quality growth. They will bring us certainties in face of the international uncertainties. Last question. Thank you. From Economic Daily. In February, the Private Enterprise Conference was held. Some new arrangements have been made as to high-quality development of the private sector. So what's the performance of private economy in Q1? And what's your take about their future? Thank you for the question. Private economy plays a very big role of modernization. They represent the basis of high-quality growth. They are a very important force of modernization. They played a big role in stabilizing growth, facilitating innovation, and improving people's livelihood. So we attached a great importance to private economy with a series of policies introduced. In this year's conference with the private enterprises, President Xi Jinping emphasized that we must observe the 2 unwavering policies in order to pursue high-quality private economic growth. Also, the remarks of President Xi Jinping boosted the confidence of the private enterprises. Relevant government departments and localities implemented the spirits of that conference. The requirements of the central government towards the private economy will be put onto the ground. In terms of the execution of such policies, we have certainly made some progress. As to Q1 statistics, they have shown the fact. Allow me to deliver some statistics. From production and operational level, private enterprises' production and operation have been improved. In Q1, industrial enterprises above designated levels, private enterprises and SMEs increased by 7.3% and 9.3% respectively. Those 2 numbers recovered from a low level last year. And compared to the average growth rate of the industry, those performances were actually above average. Of course, they don't represent all caliber data of private enterprises. Because of the statistical reform, we cannot provide you the all caliber data. The second data is to show their vitality. From investment perspective, the private investment has been positive now. In Q1, it grew up by 0.4%. Last month, it was still below 0, negative. Besides, as to the projects invested by the private economy, like manufacturing or infrastructure investment, we are trying to bring a fair playing field for the investment of private economy. For the manufacturing industry, private investment was up by 9.7%. In terms of investment on infrastructure, private economy contributed more, up by 9.3%. So those 2 numbers are both higher than the average performance. As to export and import, they had a yearly increase of 5.8%. Their contribution to the total export and import, it was 56.8%. Based on the above-mentioned statistics, we can conclude that the private economy has a more dynamic operation. Private enterprises are the most dynamic group, especially in innovation. The technological and innovative results are emerging this year from Gen AI, aerospace, quantum information. Private economy has fully shown their potential and vitality and market competitiveness. So, we must attach great importance to and better support the development of the private economy. We must execute the two unwavering policies and take solid steps to detailize the policies of supporting the private economy. We must continuously improve our business environment to intensify our support of them and to usher in a rule of law environment for the high-quality growth of private economy. Thank you. This is the end of today's press conference.